Today, I'm going to talk about conducting a social experiment. And guess what? The subject of the experiment is you. I'm Jonathan Ashong-Lamptey, and this is the Resource Group's podcast, where every week I connect the dots in terms of best practices and practical research to help the people within your workplace reach their potential and drive performance through inclusive practices. I'm on a mission to give you the tools that you need to make a difference where you work. Get your pen and paper ready, because in today's show, I'm going to explain the importance of social experiments in your employee resource group. I was inspired by a tweet by Adam Grant. He's a professor at Wharton Business School, and he spoke about running experiments. And so I'm going to discuss 3 ways in which social experiments can fast-track your inclusion journey. So the first thing is that you should think of your employee resource group as a lab. When I say that, you may be thinking of a white room with people wearing long white coats and holding clipboards. And that's one way of thinking about it. But computer labs don't look like this. Modern media labs don't look like this. So what do I mean? When I think of a lab, I think of a place where people do research, perform experiments, or measure things in general. And this extends beyond old school thinking because it's more creative. And it's that creativity that I really want you to focus on. I want you to think of your employee resource group as a place where you can come up with ideas that you can test in order to help the organization as a whole. And here's the cool thing. We define employee resource groups as voluntary groups of employees that share values, interests, and identity. Now, this isn't a homogeneous group. No, it's the exact opposite. It's a potentially diverse group of people who can come up with a variety of ideas, initiatives, plans, whatever. Now, researchers refer to this as the integration and learning approach to diversity. It's a common claim that suggests that the differences that we have amongst ourselves means that we've got access to more resources, more viewpoints in order to solve problems. Well, I want to see you put that to the test. The other great thing is that because resource groups are voluntary, you're outside of the regular chain of command. You don't have to be limited by the bureaucracy that often makes organizations really sluggish. Now, some of you may disagree with what I've just said, but reserve judgment until I get to reason number 2, the second thing I want to talk about. But before I go there, I want to talk about the importance of sharing. If you hear anything that you find interesting, then please share it with one other person that you think would find it useful. If you're finding this for the first time, make sure you check out the show notes. You can access these wherever you're listening to the podcast. The show notes have got details of all the reports and all the resources that are mentioned in the show. And I've put this together for you because I want you to go deeper into anything that we discuss here. Now that said, let's get back to talking about your social experiments. The second thing I want you to think about is reversible and irreversible decisions. The key point I want to make is that reversible decisions don't need to be made the same way as irreversible decisions. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, he compares decisions to doors. What he says is that reversible decisions are doors that open both ways. They're two-way doors that you can walk in and out of. On the other hand, irreversible decisions are doors that only open one way. One-way doors in which you can walk through in one direction, but you can't walk back in the other direction. And here's why this matters to you. Walking through a reversible door gives us information because we now know what's on the other side. So what does this mean for your employee resource group? Well, you shouldn't be afraid of making reversible decisions because if you make a, quote, bad decision, you can walk back through and you'll have more information. This is even better if there's little or no cost of doing so. Now, this doesn't mean that you should do anything to get in trouble. I'm not saying you should be reckless, but if a decision is reversible, you should consider making it fast, really quick. And guess what? You don't need perfect information, and the downside is likely to be very low. The final thing I want you to consider is going to pull all of this together. The final thing we need to think about is the outcomes of the decisions that we're making. How much do they matter? Given that we're interested in reversible decisions, these are the two-way doors, we need to think about if your reversible decisions matter. What Adam Grant suggests is that the outcome is going to dictate our behavior. If the outcome matters, that's going to change the way that we make the decision. If it doesn't matter, then you should act really quickly. Don't try and discover each and every thing. Don't overthink it, just do it. However, if your decisions are reversible and they matter, then you should run experiments. And that's the entire purpose of what we're talking about here. Now, there are so many examples of this where you can have a reversible decision with an outcome that could really matter. And they're really low cost. One of them could be pulling together a questionnaire. One of them could be something even simpler. You could observe how many floors in your building have wheelchair access. You could run a lunch and learn session to discuss Inclusion Week, Black History Month, International Women's Day, anything. You can do things to collect data. You can do things to run experiments. You can do things to test ideas. You can have little pilot studies. All of these things can be used. Now, these are important because if you run a successful experiment under these circumstances, then guess what? You learn something, and what you learn is going to matter. Now, if you want to discuss this with your friends and colleagues, I've created a slide deck for you. It summarizes everything that I've discussed today because I want to give you the tools that you need to make a difference where you work. It's free, and you can get this from the Resource Groups community on LinkedIn. So let's wrap this up. What are the key messages here? 1. You should think of your resource group as a lab. 2. Your reversible decisions should be made differently to your non-reversible decisions. And 3. Run social experiments if you can make reversible decisions for things that truly matter. So what do you think? Can you make a reversible decision in the next week? What social experiments can you run within the next month? Get in touch or leave a message. I would love to hear from you. If you've learned something from today's show, you should sign up to our insider list. It's free, and you can stay ahead of the pack and get the best of everything that I produce. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.